Hello viewers, welcome back to the Moose Mobile Auto Repair channel, and today we're working on a 2005 Toyota Corolla with the 1.8 liter engine, and we are going to be replacing the front passenger side engine mount. And also we are going to be replacing the rear engine mount again. I do have a video on replacing this. I replaced it roughly a couple years ago, and now it's already torn and separated. It's already bad now, so I'm replacing it again. Now these engine mounts are relatively very expensive from the Toyota dealership. So the original Toyota engine mounts are relatively expensive, and so that's the reason why I chose aftermarket. This Corolla is the family vehicle that gets used pretty much every single day, and so the Toyota dealership wanted just over $600 plus taxes for the front passenger side engine mount. Like it's made out of gold or something, so it's very expensive. This is just the basic vehicle. This is not your fancy vehicle, so I'm not sure why as to why the engine mounts are so expensive. So this is just over $600 with tax, Canadian dollars, that is, for this one at the Toyota dealership. The aftermarket I bought locally. It's by Anchor. I think I paid like $123 or something for this one. And for this one, I paid probably $65 or $66 for this one. At the Toyota dealer, they want roughly $376 and change plus taxes. So that's going to be over $400. So for this and this, if you buy from the Toyota dealer, you'll be spending just over $1,000 for two lousy engine mounts. It's kind of ridiculous as to the pricing these days for such parts is just beyond me. So anyhow, we just got the aftermarket parts because it's cheaper, and even if they do fail in 2 or 3 or something years, it's still a lot cheaper to replace these every so often because the labor is free. I'm the only mechanic in the household, so the labor is free. It's only the parts that we need to worry about. Because I operate as a business these days, I get a special price with a discount. And so anyhow, the part number for the passenger side front is 9164, is by Anchor. It looks like that this box has been in the inventory for quite some time. It's a little bit beat up, and there's some dust on the box, but whatever. So yeah, Anchor Industries replacement parts. I know that the company is called Anchor Industries. So 9164 for the passenger side, which is this guy here. And then you have the rear mount, which is 9155. Now for the rear engine mount, I'm not sure if they have updated the part, because a couple years ago when I replaced this, I made a video on this where I had to grind down a section because it would not fit, because the corners were too wide for the engine mount to fit. So I had to slightly grind off the corners to get this to go in. So it's just a quick tip. If you guys have had problems with the rear engine mount, you may need to grind the corner off to get it to fit for the Anchor engine mount. But I will post a link to that video if you want to watch it. And in the meantime, I'll see if I will refilm this one again and hopefully it won't be too long of a video. So just make sure that the vehicle is safely jacked up and on jack stands. We are going to be first replacing the front passenger side engine mount, because I think it's collapsed along with the rear engine mount that's in the very back. So we are going to get started on this now. So after the vehicle is jacked up and safely supported, you'll need a spare jack with a block of wood to support the engine. You can place this on the oil pan of the engine to support it. So what you can do, you can bring this jack over, place a block of wood in the center, and support the oil pan. I think that should be okay. You just need to put it just under the oil pan and support it. You don't need to jack it all the way up, just to keep the jack in place there to support it. So the first thing we want to do is to remove the engine cover out of the way. Everything is broken here, the clips in the back and this one. So we're just going to remove this nut. It's a 10 millimeter. So this is a 10 millimeter. Remove the engine cover. So on this mount, there'll be, I think it's a 14 if I'm not mistaken. It's a 14, so there's a few bolts on each side. So I'm verifying the correct size socket that I have here. So just make sure that the engine is properly supported before you start removing bolts, because this engine mount is the main engine mount on this. So we are going to start removing bolts, the 14. There's one on this side in the back. And then there's one that's hiding where the power steering pump, the power steering area. You see that there's a bolt hiding and where the power steering fluid reservoir is. If you want to remove this out of the way, you can, but you don't need to. This one here. You have one that's on top. This engine mount has been removed in the past before. I put some grease when I had to do some work in previous years. So everything from on top is all good. There's two hidden nuts underneath here, so we have to go underneath the vehicle to remove this, unless you're able to remove this from here. So there are two 14s underneath here. You can go underneath the vehicle if you want to, if you're able to reach, or you can do it from underneath the hood on whichever works best for you. Just trying to loosen this by hand. So you can see the nut on this end over here. So I'm just I loosened up the one, and then there's the one that's behind it. And so now we are just going to loosen up the other nut that's in the back. So in case that this does not work for you, then you will have to go from underneath the vehicle and just remove the splash shield out of the way. So you have to go underneath the vehicle, and then just near the accessory belt area, you'll be able to see the two nuts for the engine mount. So you should be able to see the two nuts for the engine mount. So we are going to remove them now. So I'm just going to place the camera over here, and I'm going to remove the two nuts now, because I'm not able to fit the camera inside there. So I'm just gonna go from underneath the vehicle. And then the last one. So these are the two nuts that came out. These nuts. So now you should be able to get the engine mount out, just like so, without too much difficulty, I guess. So you can see here it's all cracked. I don't know if you can see that on camera. All cracked up. I believe that this mount could be a collapse, but sometimes it's very hard to tell. But looks like it's all like torn up here. So, and at the bottom, I don't know if these are, sometimes they call them a fluid filled engine mounts. There's usually fluid in here to absorb the vibrations. So they have different style engine mounts, and I see somewhere it's wet or leaking here. I'm not sure on what it is, but it's been like that for a very long time now. So now you can compare the old and the new to make sure everything is exactly the same. Make sure that these nuts fit and go in. I like to put some anti-seize or grease in here first before I reinstall it. Also, I will post the torque specs if I'm able to find it. Otherwise, you can just tighten them down snug. They don't really need to be all that tight. These bolts are not really large bolts, so they don't need to be torqued down too much. You can put some wheel bearing or chassis grease or whatever on the studs. So we are going to install the new engine mount now. So these two studs go on the most outer left. So they have 3 holes to line everything up. And so you may need to adjust the jack to get the bolts to line up, but you can also move and shift the mount around to to get the bolts in. I'm probably going to get these bolts in first on the outer bolts, because the studs are already in, so you want to make sure you get all of the bolts in first before you tighten absolutely anything up, because otherwise you won't be able to get the other bolts in. So we're just going to just to thread in the bolts first into the frame of the car. These bolts, sometimes they can strip out very easily, so it's very important that you don't over tighten these bolts. You may need to raise or lower the engine slightly so you're able to line up the bolt holes. If you're having a hard time, then you will need to raise or lower the engine slightly. Want to do everything by hand first, because you do not want to strip out the threads on the bolt or on the frame of the vehicle. So you want to make sure everything goes in by hand first. You don't want to force anything, and if you try to force it through, then you won't be able to get the bolts in. I'm just going to loosen this up a bit so that the other side can move freely. You don't want to tighten everything down yet. So if in any case you can't get this to line up, even when you try to move this by hand, you will need to lower the vehicle. Sometimes you may need to raise the vehicle. Now this is going on an angle now, so I'll need to lower the vehicle now. You'll need to lower the vehicle slightly, but not too much. Just to get the mount to line up. So I'm just going to insert this bolt over here first, and just hand tighten it down, just to get it down a few threads or so, but don't tighten it yet. I'm still trying to get the back one to line up. So I am having a little bit of trouble trying to line up and to get the bolt all the way through, the one in the back, which is the same thing as this one. Now typically I don't tighten any of the bolts up until I've gotten all of the bolts in, and then that way you can tighten everything down afterwards. And on the Toyotas, they can be tricky, because these style bolts are not very good. It's just the way the design is, and sometimes the aftermarket mounts can be troublesome because they don't line up sometimes. So I ran into some issues here, so I'm just I took everything apart. There's some issues with the threads inside the frame, so I'm still having a look at it. I cleaned out the bolts itself and the threads inside, and I sprayed some of the penetrating oil to see if I would be able to thread in the bolt. I'm just trying a different bolt, a brand new one. It's an M10 by 1.25 bolt. So I'm just trying to figure things out. It's something looks strange in this because the threads inside the frame, they kind of move a bit. So it's kind of strange. So right now I'm just trying to thread in a new bolt. I'm just having a look at it at the moment. I've always had problems with these Toyota engine mount bolts because they are very sensitive and they strip easy. So when you install them back into the body of the frame, you have to be extremely careful because it's very easy to ruin the threads in the frame and also the bolts itself. So earlier I was able to put a chisel, and you're able to move this a bit. So I'm not sure. So I'm still having a look at it, see on what I can do. Otherwise, I'll have to use a thread chaser tool or something to see if I can repair the threads. So I got everything all in. I ran into some problems on this vehicle because I had some issues with the threads for the one in the back, and in some cases, if the threads are no good, you may need to re-thread or to thread chase the threads because these ones were slightly damaged. So I'm just giving you guys a word of caution. These bolts are very sensitive, so you have to make sure that you line these bolts up 100%. And because that this was an aftermarket mount, I had an issue with one of the studs. I think I may have over tightened the stud, the nut against the studs slightly. So what I did, I ended up using an M10 by 1.25 bolt. I think it's a 20 millimeter. So right now you can't see the stud from here. I put a bolt to hold it in place here. The engine mounts are very cheap, and that's why I don't like the aftermarket stuff, because it gives me problems. If you can, try to get the OEM stuff because that's better. So on the old part, you can see the two studs, they are fixed. When I had the new one of the studs were kind of loose, so I threaded them in by hand on the aftermarket mount. And even so, still, you need to be careful to not over tighten the aftermarket ones because they are very soft and easy to strip out. After you get all of the bolts in hand tight, or just tighten by hand, lower the engine and remove the jack, and then you can proceed to tighten up and torque down all of the bolts. You want to torque down all of the bolts once the jack is off the engine, so that the engine mount is now sitting against the frame and it's loaded, and then you want to tighten everything. Then I'll put the torque spec on the screen for you guys to see if you want to torque these bolts. These bolts don't need to be very tight. I think they're like anywhere from 30 to 40 foot-pounds, maybe 40 or 42 at most. They don't need to be on very tight. And I forgot to mention that earlier, I was having a hard time, so off camera I removed the power steering reservoir. It's two 10 millimeter bolts right here. I still need to reinstall those back. So it's just two 10 millimeter bolts. If you get this out of the way, it'll be a little bit easier to get access to the bolt over here. Now these engine mounts are tricky. It's not supposed to be a difficult job. It's supposed to be a very easy job, but the issue is the issue is that these bolts are angled at a specific angle, so it must go in at that specific way. Otherwise, it's not going to go in, and it's very easy to strip out these bolts. So I recommend that you, if you can, to loosen them and tighten them by hand only. So if you look, I just replaced that cheapo stud with a graded bolt. It should be like 10.9, but I put an 8.8. I think it should be okay. It's not going to be a big deal, but ideally you should use the same or higher grade bolt. This is all I have in stock right now, so I don't have that much of an option. So I just replaced it with a bolt to hold it in place. I think it's an M10 by 1.25 by 20 bolt. So they just use the studs because of ease of access, and to have a starting point when you insert the mount in, just to make installation easier. That's all it is. So anyhow, these mounts are very cheap, so if you can get the OEM, just get the OEM and you'll save yourself the hassles. So I just need to put the splash shield back, and then that's it. It's just a few clips, and then that's it. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please don't forget to give it a like, and please consider subscribing to my channel if you're not already a subscriber. And please don't forget to hit that bell notification if you haven't done so. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good day and take care.